I started noticing the new security guard during my third week working at the mall. Not because he was loud or overly friendly. Honestly, it was the opposite. He barely talked to anyone. Every evening around closing time, he'd appear near the front of the electronics store where I worked, hands resting behind his back, dark uniform perfectly straight, expression unreadable while the rest of us cleaned up and counted registers. At first, I assumed he was just doing rounds. But then I noticed the pattern. He only showed up during my shifts. And somehow, no matter how late we closed, he was always there when I walked out. His name tag said Ryder. That was it. No smiley personality. No random small talk. Just Ryder, tall, broad-shouldered, calm in a way that made everyone else seem too loud around him. Mall cops got a crush on you, my coworker Tiana whispered one night while refolding phone chargers near the counter. I snorted. He's literally just doing his job. He barely even speaks to me. That's because men like that are terrifying when they like someone. I rolled my eyes, but the stupid comment stayed in my head longer than I wanted it to. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. Ryder watched more than he talked. Not in a creepy way. Nothing uncomfortable. Just attentive. Like he always noticed when I looked tired. Or when customers were rude. Or when I skipped my break because the store got busy. One Thursday night, about 10 minutes before closing, a guy started yelling at me over a refund policy I couldn't control. I was already exhausted. My shift had started at 9 that morning, my manager had called out sick, and my patience was hanging by a thread. I bought these 3 weeks ago. The customer snapped, shoving headphones across the counter. You people are unbelievable. I understand, I said carefully, even though I absolutely did not understand why a grown man was acting like this over headphones. But store policy only allows. I don't care about your policy. Of course you don't, I thought. Before I could answer, a calm voice appeared beside him. Sir. Ryder. The customer turned immediately, his whole attitude changing the second he saw the uniform. There a problem here? Ryder asked evenly. The guy muttered something under his breath, grabbed the headphones, and stormed off without another word. Silence settled between us afterward. I exhaled slowly. Thanks. Ryder nodded once. You okay? Yeah. I laughed tiredly. Occupational hazard. His eyes stayed on me a second too long. You look exhausted, he said. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten a little. Not flirtatious. Not performative. Just observant. Long week, I admitted. He glanced around the nearly empty store. What time do you get off? Like 15 minutes. He nodded again. I'll walk you out. It wasn't a question. And weirdly, I didn't mind. Outside, the parking lot was mostly empty, cold air settling over the pavement while employees filtered toward their cars in small groups. I shoved my hands into my hoodie pockets as we walked. You always do this? I asked. Do what? Escort random retail workers into the night. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. First almost smile I'd seen from him. Only the ones that look half dead by closing. I laughed quietly. We reached my car, and for a second neither of us moved. Up close, he looked older than me at first glance, but not by much. Maybe mid-20s. Tired eyes. Strong jaw. The kind of face that looked serious even when he wasn't trying. Well, I said awkwardly. Thanks again. No problem, Cole. The way he said my name caught me off guard. I'd never told him my name. You know my name? His expression didn't change. You wear it on your lanyard. Right. Obviously. Still, my face warmed anyway. He stepped back slightly, hands returning behind his back like he suddenly remembered he was supposed to act professional. Drive safe. And then he walked away. I sat in my car longer than necessary afterward, watching him disappear back toward the mall entrance. Tiana's stupid comment echoed in my head the entire drive home. Mall cops got a crush on you. I told myself she was wrong. But the next night, Ryder was waiting outside my store again. The thing about Ryder was that once I started noticing him, I couldn't stop. It became part of my routine. Around 8:45, he'd appear somewhere near the storefront pretending to check exits or talk into his radio while I finished closing tasks. Then, once my shift ended, he'd walk me out like it was completely normal. No flirting. No obvious moves. Just quiet consistency. And somehow that was worse. You're smiling at your security guard again, Tiana said the following Tuesday while counting cash beside me. I am not. You literally are. I immediately forced my face neutral. I don't even know him. You know enough. I ignored her, but later that night, while locking one of the display cases, I caught Ryder already standing near the entrance, watching me. The mall lights had dimmed for closing, leaving the store softer somehow. Quieter. You always stare like that? I asked before I could stop myself. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Like what? Like you're analyzing a crime scene. That almost smile appeared again. I'm observant. Sounds ominous. It's the job. I shook my head, trying not to grin. The dangerous thing about Ryder wasn't that he was intimidating. It was that he was calm. Around him, everything in me slowed down in a way I wasn't used to. Most guys my age felt loud, fast, performative. Ryder felt steady, which should have made him less attractive. Instead, it made me think about him constantly. That same night, after we left the store, rain started pouring halfway across the parking lot. Seriously? I groaned, pulling my hoodie over my head. Ryder immediately stepped closer, holding his jacket over both of us without a word. My heart did something embarrassing. You don't have to do that, I said. You'll get sick. So will you. I'll survive. We hurried the rest of the way to my car, both of us getting soaked anyway. I was laughing by the time we reached it, rain dripping from my hair. Ryder looked at me for a long second, and something shifted. Not dramatically, just enough to make the air feel heavier. You always this happy after terrible shifts? He asked quietly. I think I'm sleep deprived. That explains a lot. I laughed again, but softer this time. He was standing close enough now that I could see tiny raindrops caught in his eyelashes. Neither of us moved. Then his radio crackled loudly against his shoulder. The moment snapped instantly. Ryder stepped back, pressing the button automatically. Copy. Right. Security guard. Professional. Normal. He lowered the radio again, expression unreadable. You should head home. The disappointment I felt was immediate and irrational. Yeah, I said. Right. I climbed into my car, and before closing the door, I looked back at him. You know, I said, most people just say goodbye after work. I know, but you keep waiting for me. For the first time since I'd met him, Ryder actually looked caught off guard. Rain hit the pavement around us in steady waves. Finally, he said quietly, I like knowing you get to your car safe. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. Because there were 100 safer answers he could have given. That wasn't one of them. I swallowed. Good night, Ryder. Good night, Cole. I drove home smiling like an idiot. And things only got worse after that. The next couple weeks turned into something dangerously close to a routine neither of us acknowledged out loud. He'd bring me coffee during late shifts sometimes. Black for himself. Vanilla iced for me. How do you know my order? I asked the first time. You get the same thing every day. Again with the observing. You're kind of creepy, you know that? You still took the coffee. Fair point. One night, after closing, we sat on the curb outside the employee entrance while I ate vending machine chips, because I'd skipped dinner again. Ryder leaned against the wall beside me, radio quiet for once. You ever sleep? He asked. Rarely. That's unhealthy. So is mall security. That earned a real laugh. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. And honestly, that might have been the exact moment I got completely screwed. Because Ryder smiling felt like seeing something nobody else got to see. You hate this job? He asked after a minute. I shrugged. Not hate. I just didn't think I'd still be here at 24. He looked at me carefully. You think you're behind? Sometimes. Ryder was quiet for a second before saying, most people are faking having their life together. You included? He looked out across the empty parking lot. Especially me. That surprised me. Ryder always seemed so composed. So controlled. What's your deal then? I asked softly. He hesitated long enough that I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, ex-military, he said simply. Didn't really know what came after. I blinked. Seriously? He nodded once. Suddenly certain things made more sense. The posture, the awareness, the constant scanning of rooms like he couldn't turn it off. That hard adjusting? I asked carefully. His jaw tightened slightly. Some days. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Most men tried so hard to sound invincible all the time. Ryder never did. A cold breeze moved through the parking lot. Without thinking, I rubbed my hands together. Immediately, Ryder noticed. You cold? I'm fine. You're shivering. I'm dramatic. He stared at me for half a second before quietly taking off his jacket and holding it out. I laughed softly. Again, take it, Cole. The way he said my name should honestly be illegal. I slid the jacket on before I could overthink it. It smelled like rain and coffee and Ryder, which definitely did not help my situation. He watched me settle into it, expression softer now. Better. Little bit. Silence settled between us again. Comfortable silence. Dangerous silence. Then my phone buzzed. Tiana, are you on a date with the security guard right now? I nearly choked. What? Ryder asked immediately. Nothing. You look guilty. I'm being cyberbullied. That tiny smile appeared again. And suddenly, I had the overwhelming feeling that something between us was getting harder to pretend wasn't there anymore. Things finally became impossible to ignore the night Ryder got jealous. Not dramatic jealous. Not possessive. Just quiet in a way that made my stomach flip. It happened during a Friday closing shift when the mall stayed open late for some holiday sale event. The store was packed for hours, customers everywhere, music too loud, everyone irritated. Around 9, this guy started hanging around the phone accessories section while I reorganized shelves. Tall, confident, definitely flirting. So, he said casually, leaning against the display, you always work this late? Unfortunately, that should be illegal. I've tried telling management. He laughed. You got plans after this? I hesitated just enough for him to notice. Maybe, I said carefully. Before he could answer, a familiar voice cut in beside us. Cole. Ryder. I turned immediately. And wow, something about his expression looked off. Controlled, obviously. Ryder was always controlled. But there was tension sitting underneath it now. Need you up front for a second, he said. The guy glanced between us. Oh, my bad. Ryder nodded once without looking at him. The second the guy walked away, I crossed my arms. You absolutely did not need me up front. No. I stared at him. He stared back. And then unbelievably Ryder looked faintly annoyed with himself. That obvious? I asked slowly. He exhaled through his nose. Probably. I tried not to smile. Failed immediately. You jealous, security boy? His jaw tightened. That guy was hitting on you. So. His eyes finally met mine fully, and the intensity there nearly wrecked me on the spot. So I didn't like it. The honesty hit like a truck. No games. No denial. Just the truth. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I quietly asked, why? Ryder looked away first, scanning the nearly empty mall corridor like he suddenly regretted saying anything. But when he answered, his voice was low and careful. You know why? Yeah, I did. My heart started beating so hard it actually annoyed me. Because this thing between us had existed in fragments for weeks now. Long looks, coffee runs, late-night conversations, waiting for me after every shift. But hearing it out loud even indirectly made it real in a completely different way. Ryder, I started softly. His radio crackled immediately. Of course it did. He pressed the button automatically, eyes still on me. Copy. On my way. The moment shattered. Again. Something frustrated flickered across his face this time. I have to go, he muttered. Yeah. He nodded once, but before turning away, he stepped closer just slightly. Close enough that my breath caught. Don't leave without me tonight, he said quietly. Then he walked off down the corridor before I could answer. I spent the next 2 hours completely incapable of functioning normally. Tiana noticed instantly. Oh my God, she whispered aggressively while pretending to fold receipts. What happened? Nothing. You look like you got proposed to. I rubbed a hand over my face. Ryder threatened a random guy with his aura. What? He was jealous. Her jaw literally dropped. I knew it. Please lower your voice before you explode. She grabbed my arm dramatically. Cole, the hot, mysterious security guard is in love with you. He is not. You're right. Men totally escort coworkers to their cars nightly for fun. I hated that she had a point. Closing dragged after that. Every time the store phone rang, I jumped. Every time someone walked past the entrance, I looked up hoping it was Ryder. Which was deeply pathetic behavior, honestly. Finally, just after midnight, he appeared again. And immediately, I knew something was wrong. His expression looked tense in a completely different way now. Sharper. More distant. You ready? He asked. Yeah. We walked through the nearly empty parking lot in silence for a while before I finally stopped beside my car. What happened? Ryder frowned slightly. What do you mean? You disappeared. Work. No, I said quietly. Now you're avoiding me. That made him go still. Cold wind moved across the lot, carrying distant traffic noise from the highway nearby. Finally, Ryder sighed. I shouldn't have said that earlier. My chest dropped a little. Oh, it wasn't professional. Professional. Right. For some reason, that word hurt more than it should have. I looked down at my keys, forcing myself to nod casually. Okay. Cole. No. It's fine, I interrupted quickly. You don't owe me anything. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because Ryder's expression changed instantly. Like I genuinely upset him. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Silence. Long silence. Then, very quietly. I'm trying to do this right. I looked up slowly. Ryder stepped closer, close enough that I could see exhaustion sitting behind his eyes. When I left the military, he said carefully, I got very good at keeping people at a distance. I didn't say anything. And then you happened. My heartbeat stuttered painfully. He looked frustrated with himself now, like honesty physically cost him something. I wait for your shifts because I want to, he admitted. I notice things about you because I can't stop. And when that guy flirted with you tonight, I hated how much it bothered me. I forgot how breathing worked for a second. Ryder glanced away briefly before continuing. But you work here. And I work here. So I'm trying not to make this unfair for you. There it was. Not rejection. Fear. Careful, controlled fear. And somehow that felt even more dangerous. Ryder, I said softly. You know this isn't one-sided, right? His eyes lifted back to mine immediately. The look on his face nearly destroyed me. You shouldn't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them. Silence crashed between us. Then Ryder laughed once under his breath, almost disbelieving. Jesus Christ, Cole. And before I could respond, he reached out carefully like he was giving me every chance to stop him and brushed his fingers lightly against my wrist. Barely anything, but it felt enormous. You should go home, he said quietly. You keep saying that. That's because if you stay any longer, I'm probably going to kiss you in this parking lot. My brain completely stopped functioning. Ryder looked equally affected by his own sentence, which honestly helped a little. I stared at him. He stared back. Then I managed, very intelligently. Oh, that finally made him smile for real. Warm. Genuine. Dangerous. Yeah, he murmured. Oh, after that night in the parking lot, everything changed. And somehow, nothing changed at all. Ryder still waited for me after shifts. Still brought me coffee. Still looked at me like he was trying very hard not to. But now there was something underneath every interaction. Awareness. The problem was that once you knew someone wanted to kiss you, every small thing became unbearable. The way his hand brushed my back, guiding me through crowded hallways. The way his voice lowered whenever it was just the two of us. The way he looked at my mouth sometimes before catching himself. It was driving me insane. You two are actually painful to watch, Tiana announced 3 days later while reorganizing display cables. I looked up innocently. What does that mean? It means the tension in this store is becoming a workplace hazard. I nearly dropped the scanner in my hand. Tiana. What? He literally watches you like you hung the moon. He does not. Right on cue, Ryder appeared outside the storefront mid-patrol and immediately looked directly at me. Tiana pointed aggressively. That look. Unfortunately, she was correct. The second Ryder noticed me noticing him. His expression softened automatically. Tiny change. Barely visible. But once you saw it, it was impossible to miss. Oh my God, she whispered. You're both doomed. Probably. That same night, the mall lost power for almost 20 seconds. Not fully emergency lights kicked in immediately, but enough for the entire building to fall into dim red lighting, while customers panicked dramatically for no reason. Everybody remained calm. My manager called out unnecessarily, while people absolutely did not remain calm. I was helping shut down registers when someone suddenly appeared beside me. Ryder, you okay? He asked immediately. I'm literally standing still. You looked startled. You sprinted over here like the apocalypse started. His jaw shifted slightly, like he knew exactly what he'd done. Occupational hazard, he muttered. I smiled despite myself. Emergency lights painted everything darker around us, shadows cutting sharply across Ryder's face while mall announcements echoed overhead. For a second, the store around us faded into background noise. You know, I said quietly, most people would think you're worried about me. His eyes locked onto mine instantly. I am worried about you. My heart nearly gave out. The honesty between us had become terrifying lately. No pretending. No jokes to hide behind anymore. Just Ryder saying things that lodged directly in my chest and stayed there. Someone called my name from the stockroom, breaking the moment. I looked away first. When I glanced back, Ryder was still watching me with that same impossible expression, like he was trying very hard to stay careful. That should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made me want him more. Later that night, after closing, Rain hammered against the mall roof again, while employees crowded near exits waiting it out. Great, I sighed. I love living inside a car wash. You parked far? Ryder asked beside me. Other side of the lot. He nodded once. Come on. Before I could ask what that meant, he started walking toward the security office hallway. I followed immediately because apparently my survival instincts no longer existed. You're kidnapping me? I asked. Temporarily. The security office was small but surprisingly warm, lit by soft desk lamps and glowing monitor screens showing camera feeds from around the mall. This is where you hide all night? I asked, looking around. Ryder hung his jacket over the back of a chair. Pretty glamorous, right? Very intimidating. You're mocking me. A little. For the first time since meeting him, I got to see Ryder somewhere that belonged to him. And weirdly, it made him seem softer. Less like the composed security guard everybody saw walking the mall, and more like just a guy who drank too much coffee and worked exhausting shifts. A half-finished energy drink sat beside paperwork on the desk. His hoodie was tossed over another chair. There was even a stupid little plant near the monitors that looked barely alive. You own a plant? I asked, shocked. Ryder looked offended. His name is Kevin. I laughed so suddenly it caught both of us off guard. And God, the way Ryder looked at me afterward. Warm, open, completely gone for me. The room felt smaller all over again. Rain pounded outside while silence settled between us. Not awkward, just full. You know, I said quietly. You smile more around me now. Ryder leaned back against the desk slightly, watching me carefully. That a bad thing? No. His eyes moved over my face slowly enough to make my pulse jump. Good. The air shifted. Again. It kept happening lately, these moments where everything suddenly felt too close, too honest, too impossible to keep pretending away. I stepped nearer without really meaning to. Ryder noticed immediately. Of course he did. He always noticed everything. You're staring again, I murmured. You're standing very close to me. That sounds like my fault somehow. It probably is. I laughed softly, but it disappeared the second Ryder reached out carefully and adjusted the hood of my sweatshirt. Such a tiny gesture. But his fingers lingered near my jaw for half a second too long afterward. Neither of us moved. The rain outside faded into background noise. Cole, he said quietly. And the way he said my name this time, like it physically meant something to him, completely ruined me. What? I whispered. Ryder looked down at me with an expression so conflicted it almost hurt to see. Like he wanted something very badly and was still trying to be careful with it. With you, he admitted softly. Everything feels harder than it's supposed to. I swallowed. Harder good or harder bad? That finally pulled a small smile from him. Definitely harder good. And then his radio crackled again. Honestly, at that point I was ready to throw the thing into traffic. Ryder closed his eyes briefly in frustration before answering it. I laughed under my breath. Your greatest enemy. You have no idea. He pressed the button. Go ahead. Static answered back for several seconds while I watched him. Really watched him. And suddenly it hit me with full force. Ryder had been holding himself back this entire time. Not because he didn't want me. Not because he was unsure. Because he cared enough to move slowly. That realization settled somewhere deep in my chest and stayed there long after the rain stopped. The first time Ryder touched me on purpose, it was so subtle nobody else in the world would have noticed it. Which honestly made it worse. It happened during a Saturday rush when the mall was packed shoulder to shoulder with people escaping bad weather outside. The electronics store was chaos. Kids screaming. Phones ringing. Customers asking questions that made no sense. I was running entirely on caffeine and maybe one functioning brain cell. Cole, my manager called from across the store. Can you grab the inventory scanner from the back? Yep. I slipped into the stockroom gratefully, shutting the heavy door behind me and finally exhaling into the quiet. Best 30 seconds of my life. Until the door opened again. Ryder stepped inside. And immediately, the tiny room felt 10 times smaller. You hiding? He asked. I leaned against the shelf dramatically. If anyone asks, I died. That busy. I almost got yelled at because we sold out of chargers. That's devastating. You understand my pain. His mouth twitched. God, I was addicted to making him smile at this point. You look tired, he said after a second. Starting to think that's just my face. Ryder stepped closer automatically, concern flickering across his expression before he could hide it. No, he said quietly. It's not. My heartbeat stumbled. Again. Every conversation with him somehow became too real too fast. I looked down briefly, trying to regain control of my nervous system, and that's when I noticed his hand flex slightly at his side, like he wanted to reach for me. The realization hit me so hard I forgot how to speak for a second. Then, very carefully, Ryder did it anyway, just his fingers brushing lightly against my sleeve near my wrist. Barely there. Questioning. My entire body reacted instantly, and Ryder noticed. Of course he did. His eyes darkened slightly, while his hand lingered another second longer than necessary. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Absolutely not." "Yeah, I lied." The stockroom suddenly felt way too warm. Ryder looked at me for a long moment before quietly saying, "You're shaking. I hate you a little for noticing everything." That finally made him laugh softly. Then the store intercom blared overhead. "Call to register too." I groaned immediately, dropping my forehead briefly against the metal shelf beside me. "Saved by capitalism," Ryder murmured. "You think this is funny?" "A little." I looked back at him, and for one dangerous second neither of us moved. We were standing way too close now. Close enough that I could see the faint scar near his chin I'd never noticed before. Close enough that his cologne mixed with the dusty stockroom air. Close enough that kissing him suddenly felt like a very realistic possibility. My brain completely short-circuited. Ryder's eyes flicked to my mouth, then immediately away again. That tiny movement nearly killed me. "You should go before your manager starts a search party," he said quietly. "Right." Neither of us moved. "Cole." "Yeah." His expression softened in a way that made my chest ache. "You make it very hard to act normal." I stared at him. Because somehow, after weeks of tension and careful almost moments, that might have been the most honest thing he'd said yet. "You think you're acting normal?" I asked softly. A real smile appeared then. Warm. Tired. Completely genuine. Not even a little. The intercom called my name again. "Tragic," I muttered. Ryder stepped back finally, giving me space again even though he clearly didn't want to. That somehow affected me more than if he'd just kissed me. The restraint. The care. I opened the stockroom door halfway before pausing. Then I looked back at him. "You know," I said carefully, "if you keep looking at me like that, eventually I'm going to do something reckless." Ryder went very still. The air between us shifted instantly. "What kind of reckless?" he asked quietly. Oh, that voice was unfair. I swallowed hard. "I haven't decided yet." For the first time since meeting him, Ryder looked genuinely close to losing composure. And apparently I liked that way too much. "Cole," he warned softly. "What?" "You are playing a very dangerous game." I smiled despite my racing heartbeat. "You started it." His eyes stayed locked on mine for another long second before he finally exhaled quietly through his nose. "Go help your customers. You're no fun." "That's not what you said 5 minutes ago." I nearly walked directly into the doorframe on my way out. The worst part? I could still feel the warmth of his fingers against my wrist for the rest of the shift. And judging by the look Ryder gave me later while escorting me to my car again, he could too. By the next week, Ryder and I had reached a point where literally everyone noticed something was happening except us pretending we still had self-control. Even my manager caught on. "You and security seem friendly lately," she said casually while printing receipts. I almost inhaled my own saliva. "What?" She shrugged innocently. "He's here a lot. He works here. MHM." I escaped to the stockroom immediately. Cowardly behavior, but necessary. The problem was that Ryder and I still hadn't crossed the line. Not fully. No kiss. No date. Nothing either of us could point to and say, "Yes, this is happening." And honestly, that was becoming unbearable. Because every interaction now felt charged enough to start a fire. Especially at night. Closing shifts with Ryder had become my favorite part of every day in a way that probably wasn't healthy. Around 10:45, I'd start looking toward the storefront automatically. At 10:50, he'd appear. At 11 o'clock, we'd walk out together. Routine. One dangerously intimate routine. That Thursday night, we left the mall later than usual because inventory had taken forever. Most employee cars were already gone, leaving the parking lot almost completely empty. Cold air wrapped around us while we walked. "You ever regret taking this job?" I asked suddenly. Ryder glanced at me. "Mall security?" "Yeah." He considered it for a second. "Sometimes." "Why stay?" Another quiet pause. "Needed structure after the military," he admitted. "Somewhere predictable." That sounds depressing when you say it out loud. It kind of is. I smiled faintly. Then Ryder looked at me and added quietly. Got less depressing after you started working here. My heart genuinely malfunctioned. You can't just say things like that casually. I wasn't being casual. Great. Fantastic. I was dying. We reached my car, but neither of us made any move to end the conversation. Again, it kept happening. Like both of us were always searching for reasons to stay another 5 minutes. You know what your problem is? I asked softly. Ryder leaned lightly against the car beside me. Should I be worried? You think too much. That's rich coming from you. I'm serious. He looked at me carefully. Explain. I took a breath. You keep treating this like it's something dangerous. His jaw shifted slightly. Isn't it? No, I said immediately. It's just new. Silence settled between us. Then Ryder asked quietly, You really aren't scared of this? I looked at him honestly. I think I would be if it was anyone else. Something vulnerable flickered across his face so quickly I almost missed it. And suddenly I realized something important. Ryder wasn't afraid of wanting me. He was afraid of wanting me too much. That realization settled heavily in my chest. You know what I think? I said softly. What? I think you've spent so much time trying to stay controlled that you forgot some things are supposed to feel a little messy. Ryder stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed quietly under his breath, shaking his head slightly. Cole. What? You have absolutely no idea what you do to me. The way he said it. Low, rough, exhausted. Completely destroyed any remaining stability I had left. I stepped closer before I could overthink it. Ryder immediately went still. Not backing away. Not moving forward. Just watching me carefully now. Waiting. Always waiting for me to decide first. You know, I murmured. For someone who threatened to kiss me weeks ago, you're taking a very long time. His eyes darkened instantly. That was me behaving. Your self-control is honestly getting insulting. That finally broke him a little. Ryder looked down briefly, jaw tight, before meeting my eyes again. You really want to test that theory right now? Every nerve ending in my body lit up. But before I could answer, a car alarm suddenly exploded somewhere across the parking lot. I burst out laughing immediately. Ryder closed his eyes like the universe personally offended him. You have the worst timing I've ever seen, I told him. I'm aware. The alarm kept blaring obnoxiously in the distance. Neither of us moved. Then, slowly, Ryder reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Such a gentle gesture. So careful. And somehow that affected me more than anything else had. His fingers brushed lightly along my temple before falling away again. Drive home safe, he said quietly. There was something different in his voice now. Less restraint. More inevitability. Like whatever this was between us had finally reached the point where neither of us could stop it anymore. I swallowed hard. Ryder. Yeah. If I kissed you right now. He went completely still. The parking lot suddenly felt silent except for the distant alarm finally shutting off. I could actually see Ryder trying to breathe normally. What happens? I finished softly. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Then, very carefully, he said, I don't think I'd be able to pretend this is casual anymore. And honestly, that sounded perfect to me. I kissed him first. Technically, although Ryder looked about half a second away from doing it himself. We were still standing beside my car in the nearly empty parking lot, cold air moving between us while my heartbeat absolutely lost its mind. Ryder hadn't moved after my question. If I kissed you right now? His answer still echoed in my chest. I don't think I'd be able to pretend this is casual anymore. Good, because I was getting really tired of pretending too. You know, I said softly. You think way too hard for a guy who literally walks me to my car every night. A faint smile tugged at Ryder's mouth. Probably. And for someone trying to stay professional. I stepped closer slowly. You look at me like you already made up your mind weeks ago. That did something to him. I saw it happen in real time. The restraint. The careful distance. Cracking. Cole, he warned quietly. But his voice lacked any real warning now. Mostly it sounded tired. Like he was exhausted from holding himself back. What? I whispered. Ryder looked down at me with an expression so openly conflicted it made my chest ache. You keep getting closer. Maybe I want to. Silence. Then Ryder said the most unfair thing imaginable. You have no idea how hard it is not to touch you. That was it. That was absolutely it for me. I grabbed the front of his jacket softly and kissed him before my brain could interfere. And immediately, Ryder kissed me back, like he'd been waiting. One hand moved instinctively to my waist, pulling me closer with this quiet kind of certainty that nearly melted my entire nervous system. Nothing rushed, nothing messy, just warm and careful and real. And God, kissing Ryder felt exactly like everything else about him did. Steady, intentional, impossible to pull away from. When we finally separated, neither of us moved far. Ryder rested his forehead lightly against mine, breathing unevenly for probably the first time since I'd met him. "Well," I whispered. That actually made him laugh softly. "You're enjoying this way too much. You were threatening me with unresolved tension for like a month." I was trying to behave. "You failed. Clearly." I smiled helplessly. Ryder looked at me for another long second before his expression shifted softer somehow, almost disbelieving. "You kissed me," he said quietly. "You sound surprised." "I am." "Why?" His hand remained warm against my waist while he answered. "Because usually people get tired of waiting for me." That hit deeper than he probably intended. I looked at him carefully. "Ryder." "Yeah. You know I would have waited, right?" Something vulnerable flashed across his face, so openly this time it nearly wrecked me. And suddenly I understood something important. Ryder wasn't slow because he didn't feel enough. He was slow because he felt things deeply enough to take seriously. That realization settled somewhere permanent inside my chest. The parking lot around us stayed quiet, distant streetlights reflecting off damp pavement, while neither of us seemed interested in stepping apart yet. "So," I murmured eventually, "what now?" Ryder smiled faintly. "We probably stop pretending this is accidental." "Good plan." "And," he added carefully, "I'd like to take you on an actual date." I stared at him dramatically. "Wow, very traditional of you." "You complaining?" "Absolutely not." That small smile appeared again, softer now, easier than before. Like kissing me had finally allowed him to relax a little, which honestly might have been my favorite part. For weeks, Ryder had looked like a man trying to keep himself under control around me. Now he just looked happy, and maybe a little overwhelmed. "You okay?" I asked quietly. He exhaled softly through his nose. "Ask me again when my heartbeat recovers." I laughed immediately. Then Ryder looked at me again. Really looked at me. And something warm settled into his expression. "You know what the worst part is?" he asked. "What?" "I've wanted to do that since the first week I met you." My jaw dropped. "Excuse me." "You heard me." "Ryder, you were wearing that stupid blue hoodie," he continued calmly, "and helping an elderly customer connect headphones to her phone." I stared at him in disbelief. "You remember what I was wearing? You remember my coffee order?" "Fair point. Still, that's insane behavior. So is falling for a retail worker because he's nice to people." I smiled so hard my face hurt. And for the first time since this whole thing started, there was no tension sitting between us anymore. No almost. No hesitation. Just me and Ryder standing beside my car, smiling at each other like complete idiots after finally crossing the line we'd both been circling for weeks. Then Ryder glanced at the time and sighed quietly. "I should let you go home." I grinned immediately. "You always say that." "Yeah," he murmured, brushing his thumb lightly once against my side before stepping back slowly. "Difference is now I'm going to think about kissing you the entire drive home." My heartbeat instantly lost control again. "Oh," I said weakly. That made him laugh for real. Warm. Low. Completely gone for me. "Yeah, Cole," he said softly. Oh, dating Ryder turned out to be strangely easy. Not because he suddenly became less intense. If anything, he got worse. Just softer about it. The first official date happened 3 nights later at a tiny diner 20 minutes away from the mall because, according to Ryder, nobody from work goes there. Still thinking like security, I teased while sliding into the booth across from him. "I'm adapting slowly. You escorted me to my car for 6 weeks before kissing me. That was fast for me." I laughed immediately. God, I loved making him smile now. Outside the diner windows, rain tapped softly against the glass again. Apparently the universe had decided weather was part of our relationship aesthetic now, while Ryder sat across from me looking calmer than I'd ever seen him. Not guarded. Not overthinking every word. Just here. It hit me halfway through fries and terrible coffee that this was the first time I'd ever been alone with Ryder without some countdown hanging over us. No shift ending. No radios interrupting. No parking lot goodbyes. Just time. "You're staring," Ryder said quietly. "You've gotten less scary." "That's disappointing." "No, it's worse actually." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Worse. You're cute now." Ryder looked personally offended. "Cute. Very. I was in the military, Cole. And now you own a dying plant, named Kevin. That completely broke him. Ryder laughed hard enough to duck his head briefly, and I swear something rearranged permanently inside my chest seeing it. Because this version of him, felt private somehow. Special. You know, he said once he recovered. You're much meaner now that you know I like you. You were emotionally intimidating first. Fair. A comfortable silence settled after that. The good kind. The kind where looking at each other felt just as natural as talking. Then Ryder asked quietly, "Can I tell you something without you making fun of me?" "Probably not, but continue." He shook his head slightly, smiling under his breath before his expression turned more serious. "The first night I walked you to your car," he admitted, "I sat in my truck afterward for like 10 minutes trying to convince myself not to ask for your number. My heart immediately melted. You wanted my number that early? I noticed you the first day you started working there." I stared at him. Ryder shrugged faintly, almost embarrassed now. "You were helping set up a display and singing under your breath because you thought nobody could hear you. Oh my God, you were terrible, by the way. Rude. You still are." I laughed helplessly, but underneath it something warm spread through me slowly. Because Ryder noticed everything, not just the big moments, the tiny ones too. And suddenly I understood why his attention had always felt different. It wasn't surface-level attraction. He paid attention because caring came naturally to him. That realization hit hard enough that I went quiet for a second. Ryder noticed instantly. "What?" "Nothing. Cole." I smiled softly into my coffee cup. "I just really like you." The words slipped out before I could overthink them. Ryder went still immediately. Not uncomfortable, just affected. His eyes stayed on me for several long seconds before he answered quietly. "You have no idea what that does to me." Yeah, that definitely didn't help my heartbeat situation. After dinner, Ryder walked me to my car again out of habit even though we'd driven separately. "You know I'm capable of surviving parking lots alone," I pointed out. "I know, but—" His hand settled lightly against my lower back while we walked. "But I like taking care of you." I nearly tripped over absolutely nothing. Ryder caught my arm immediately, trying not to laugh. "You okay there?" "No," I informed him honestly. "You say things that psychologically damage me." A warm smile spread slowly across his face. "Good." The parking lot outside the diner was nearly empty, lit by pale streetlights and reflecting rainwater across the pavement. Ryder stopped beside my car reluctantly. And wow, I was already starting to hate leaving him. "You working tomorrow?" I asked softly. He nodded once. "Closing shift." "Me too." Something pleased flickered across his expression at that. Routine. We still had it. Only now I could kiss him at the end of it. Ryder reached up carefully and brushed his thumb lightly along my jaw. Tiny gesture. Massive effect. "You know what's weird?" he murmured. "What?" "I spent weeks trying not to touch you." His voice dropped lower. "Now it's all I think about." My entire nervous system short-circuited immediately. "Ryder." That sounded less smooth out loud. "No," I said weakly. "It really didn't." He laughed softly, stepping closer again until I could feel warmth radiating from him in the cold night air. Then he kissed me. Slow this time. Unhurried. Like he finally believed he was allowed to. And standing there in the rain-damp parking lot outside a mediocre diner, kissing the quiet security guard who used to wait for the end of my shifts every night, I realized something that made my chest ache in the best possible way. Ryder had been careful with me from the very beginning. Not because he was unsure, because I mattered to him before either of us even admitted it.